After the performance, you know, what do you say? It was horrible, okay? And I thought, well, that's the end of the band. So after they played, all the bands had little tables set up, and they've got CDs and T-shirts and stuff. Ben had made on the computer some little decals. I think he had 6 of them. That's what they had to offer. There was their whole offering, and I don't think they, so I bought them, because I felt sorry for them.
After a few years of development and playing at a number of Christian venues, Evanescence had their first paid performance at Vino's Brewpub in downtown Little Rock.
For most of these kids, the end-all be-all was, you know, playing a headlining gig down at Vino's. You know, that was how they knew they had made it, when they could play, you know, get up there and attract a crowd of a bunch of their friends up there. And so most of them, they were just, you know, they were playing together. They were trying to write and play cool music and stuff that entertained them.
If you were an Evanescence style band coming up, you'd probably start out at Vino's Brewpub. It's a pizza place, beer joint, and about a 200-seat venue. It stresses heavy rock.
Barry Ellis is the owner of Stonehenge Rehearsal Studios, where Evanescence practice. Barry has himself played at Vino's on countless occasions.
Vino's is a brew pub. They serve, you know, pizza and good food, good beer. It's what they call a shotgun place, if you ever know what I'm talking about. It's just a big, long, straightway place. You know, you can go all the way through the back. You know, you can open up the back door and open the front door, and it's a shotgun building. They also have the live acts, you know, in the back. It's anywhere from local stuff to regional to national acts.
Vino's is probably where most people consider they played their first actual show. Ben and Amy did a lot of collaboration things together, but in terms of an actual paid admission type Evanescence show, it was here. We have an event called Fresh Blood. It's on any random Thursday every month, and we bring in bands that have never played the room, generally haven't played out much at all.
We've seen some pretty big names come off that stage, as well as some pretty crappy acts. But I mean, that's just part of the, you know, part of the game. You know, I mean, you got to give everybody a shot.
The early shows were a little bit, I mean, maybe awkward for lack of a better word, because there was no full-time band other than Amy and Ben, and the use of electronics and things. So it was a little bit awkward, but it was pretty evident right off the bat that there was something there, because there's not very many female-fronted rock bands in a town like Little Rock.
The first real show that we saw that we were really proud of, it wasn't the one out in that field. That was the one where you just wanted to go home and hope this all ended soon. But the first real show we saw was at a little place called TNT off I-30 in Benton, Arkansas. It's part of a church. It was in a big youth group area. And I never forget when we were there that night, I was watching Amy and them and thinking, these guys are really good. But what turned me on is when I turned to look at the crowd, and I saw almost everybody in the crowd singing every word. Thinking, that's the song my daughter was singing around the house.
Ben and Amy realised early on that to create the type of music they wanted, they had to form an exclusive leadership partnership.
Ben and Amy formed that partnership between each other because they're that smart in the long run. I think they knew. I think those are two people that knew that if they stuck with their dream, they were going to make it big.
I'd say that Ben and Amy definitely had a connection or an understanding by the sheer fact that they were the two in charge.
It's hard to say really whether the friendship came out of the band or if the band came out of the friendship, because they very clearly, you know, clicked there.
Yeah, the chemistry between Amy and Ben Moody was amazing. It looked like they were in love, you know, that they'd actually been intimate, you know, because they played off of each other so well, and that's really easy to spot in a band.
Ben and Amy were much like brother and sister in many ways. In high school they dated some, and so they were boyfriend and girlfriend too for a while, and then they wouldn't be for a while, and then but they were very much, the way I see that relationship was much like brothers and sisters.
They were very close. They'd, as most teenagers would, they'd insult each other constantly as a form of affection.
They didn't have a whole lot of people that thought like they did, so they kept it condensed. It's just going to be us. We're going to work on this project, and we play out. We'll hire people and show them the parts.
They would sit around either at Amy's house or at Ben's house, and they would play guitars and play piano with each other and write songs and ping-pong stuff back and forth in a little 4-track mini disc recorder.
The main reason they didn't have a real band is because they couldn't get anybody to think like them. It was their thing was totally different. A female voice, which was pretty angelic, and you got these heavy industrial guitar riffs. People are going, they can't wrap my mind around that.
I don't really know if their sound is totally unique because, you know, I've heard of other bands before them that they seem to kind of model their sound after.
I always described the band, Amy was kind of the light, and Ben was the lens that brought everything into focus.
Evanescence was Ben and Amy. It wasn't like one of them could leave and they could replace the other and still call it Evanescence.
Very self-contained between the two of them for a very long time as far as all the writing and the arranging and the recording. And they would occasionally they would bring someone in to play drums, or they'd bring someone in to play bass.
In order to play live, Evanescence had to supplement the band with other players.
Or Amy would bring in some of her friends to sing backup. But generally, they were very, very self-contained in the beginning, and they would hire. I remember their first show as Evanescence. They had 7 or 8 people on stage.
Evanescence rarely performed live, but when they did, they used a revolving lineup of musicians from the local area. Nick Williams recalls playing bass for them.
Really, the band Evanescence at the time that I played with them was Ben and Amy. They had me on bass, Matt Al on drums, and Will Boyd on guitar. And what it was like is they had a demo they had already recorded. They had the music. I just took it home, learned my part, showed up, and played it.
But they never had enough money to hire somebody to play with them. So if every once in a while, which was only maybe once a year or twice a year over a 3-year period, if they wanted to play out at TNT or at Lamplighter or at finally Vino's, which was really a big venue, they had to pay people to play with them, but they never had 2 nickels to rub together. They didn't have any money.
I remember their first show as Evanescence. They had 7 or 8 people on stage, and it was all their friends, and they'd gotten them together pretty much just to play the show, and it was all material that Amy and Ben had written and recorded.
Well, when I first came into the band with Ben and Amy, it was their music. They already had a demo recorded, and so it was me on bass, Matt Al on drums, and Will Boyd on guitar at the time. And when you'd show up to practice, you'd already have taken the demo home, you've already learned it, you've played it. And so there's not really a whole lot of working things out. You know, you play your part.
Dottie Oliver is the owner of the Little Rock Free Press and has noticed the frequency of lineup changes in the local music scene.
Actually, you know, I have never been one to keep up with the lineup, the bands around here, because if you will notice by being around our city, one band member might play in 4 different bands, and he might play 3 different instruments in those 4 different bands. It's hard to keep up with them.
The music community, in order to kind of sustain itself and constantly perpetuate itself and grow, it has a lot of people who play a lot of different